Welcome to the Business Exit Roundtable with Heath Frantzen, along with his guests, real experts with real ideas and actionable strategies for leveraging the wealth in your business. And now, here's the author of The Psychology of Money, the chairman of the Exit Planning Exchange, and founder and CEO of Delta Business Services, your host, Heath Frantzen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Business Exit Roundtable, presented by the only real solution for selling a business today, the Delta Solution from Delta Business Services. And if you haven't done so already, go to deltabusinessservices.com and get our free report to learn how you can sell your business, get cash flow for life, and pay zero taxes. And if you're a business owner within a few years of wanting to sell your company and retire, then you've probably asked yourself, how can I ensure that my business sells for the best possible price? As a business buyer, I look for companies that are not only solvent, but positioned to grow. And one of the things that can make that growth happen is having a strong protocol in place for attracting new clients and growing a database. Today's guest is Jim Fortin. He has personally helped hundreds of business owners attract more quality clients and close more sales using powerful and proven techniques based on science. He is on a mission to help and serve others by training them to be more effective in the areas of persuasion and influence. Jim Fortin is a certified master practitioner of neuro-linguistic-programming, NLP, and a certified master hypnotist. Using advanced hypnotic language patterns and social science, Jim has merged both areas of expertise into a new, highly effective persuasion technology called neuro-persuasion. These persuasive techniques are helping salespeople at every level shorten sales cycles and move customers to action. Welcome to the Business Exit Roundtable, Jim.
Hey there, how are you, Heath? Can you hear me?
We're doing great, yes.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. What do you want to visit about today?
Well, let's go ahead and get into it. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background about neuropersuasion, yourself, and please tell us how you came to study persuasion and influence.
Okay. Very briefly here is years ago I got into NLP, which many people have heard of NLP, neuro-linguistic-programming, created back in the 70s by Bandler and Grinder. Mm-hmm. And what happened was it was a fluke. I used to be a hypnotist, and this was 20 years ago. I was a hypnotist, and I worked in New York City. And as a hypnotist, we use certain language to plant suggestions to lead people where they tell us they want to go. Stop smoking, lose weight, pass tests, be more effective, more productive, less fear, whatever it is. And one of my clients was a vice president at Goldman Sachs on Wall Street, and he stopped smoking with me using hypnosis. And he said to me one day, he's like, he asked me what happened and why he stopped smoking when he couldn't on his own. And I explained to him that hypnotists use language to influence people. And he said to me, can you teach me some of this language so that I can be more influential with my clients? And he used to deal with high net worth clients. And I said, absolutely. And in that moment, it was born for me, why don't I take all the tools that a hypnotist uses and then just map those over into business, whether it be business with video or one-to-one presentations or meetings or web copy or whatever, take all these tools and all this language that hypnotists use and transfer it over to business. And that's what I did back in 98, which was, I guess, 16 years ago. And it caught on like wildfire. And I've been doing it ever since. And then over the years, it's morphed into, behavioral research and new brain research that's been out the last decade or so about how we buy and how we make our decisions and how things affect us in the world subconsciously. So the final comment on that question is the way that I look at business, all business, is how do you subconsciously, or I use the word unconsciously, how do you unconsciously drive the mind of your prospect? Because research has demonstrated that up to 95% of all buying decisions are subconsciously made. And so what I tell people is that if you want to grow your business, whether it be sales, marketing, or advertising, you have to know how to get into the subconscious mind of your prospect to get them to do something. So that's how I got to where I am today.
All right. So we hear a lot of different terms from sales trainers and television psychologists and so forth. Can you briefly explain some of the terminology used in the areas of persuasion and influence? For example, what is the definition of persuasion and how is it different from influence?
Good question. You know what? You're the only person who's ever asked me that. And let me take one step. No one's ever asked, believe it or not.
Okay.
And most companies, and I've not trained thousands, I've trained hundreds of thousands of people, and no one's ever asked. And most companies never look at it in the way that I'm going to explain it to you as well, because I see companies losing billions of dollars in bad advertising and bad marketing because they don't understand persuasion and influence. So persuasion is this. Persuasion is tactics, strategies, and techniques to lead people to a belief or to an action. Very simple. Most people don't get it. They don't realize that. I want to say, I feel confident saying that. Most people don't get that every bit of advertising or marketing you put out, you want to lead people to a belief, obviously a positive belief, or a positive action about your business. So persuasion is tactics, strategies, and techniques. Influence, on the other hand, is seemingly having power over others with little effort. For example, look at some of the most influential people of the past 100 years. Look at Martin Luther King. He didn't have to beat people over the head to follow him. What he did is he created influence over them, and then he had power over them, as did Oprah and Gandhi and Ronald Reagan and JFK, and the biggest one of the last century, Hitler. So influence is when you created that influence over your prospect and client in the selling situation, and they follow you without question. So that's the definition of persuasion and influence. And again, kudos, because no one has ever asked me. Everyone's paycheck depends upon how persuasive and how influential you can be. Because, see, every bit of marketing and advertising and sales is only as effective as it is persuasive and influential. So persuasion and influence are the foundation of all sales, marketing, and advertising. Everyone's paycheck and business growth depends on it. And you were the only person in the last, last 20 years that's asked me that. So you get a gold star.
Okay, all right. I go to the head of the class. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, you can tell I did my homework, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me ask you this. Give us some examples of persuasive language patterns that can have an immediate effect on the outcome of a situation. Say, for example, that a business owner is trying to sell their business and they're trying to close a big deal. What are some examples of persuasive language patterns?
Okay, I could give you 100. I'll give you a couple of easy ones here. Okay, so the fact that you and I are talking means that you're wanting to bring your listeners the best business advice available. Is that correct?
No question. No question.
Okay. I just used a language pattern on you right there. When I said the fact that we're talking, the language pattern is the fact that blank means blank. That's the whole pattern that a hypnotist would use. So when I said to you the fact that we're talking, I said to you a truism. You could not argue with me. You could not say, What? We're not talking. What do you mean? We're not talking at all, right? We are talking. So
sure.
When I said the fact that we're talking, it forced you to stay true to that. And then I said, I put my meaning on it. Means that you want to bring the absolute best expertise to your listeners. And again, I forced you to say yes. Now, if you notice, what I've done is I am now controlling where I'm leading your thinking, because then what I could do next, if I were trying to convince you of something, I could say, well, that being the case, I'm one of the best, as you'll discover, I'm one of the best experts in the country in the area of persuasion and influence, and I would be a great fit for your audience. So, pardon me, instead of me just telling you, hey, I want to be on your show, what I've gotten you to do is say yes once, yes twice, and then I planted the suggestion and then tied it back to your identity because you want the best. I said I'm the best, which then makes you buy in, oh, okay, if I can confirm that he's the best and I want the best, he's a good fit for me. And then I said, as you're going to discover, I didn't say I am, I said you're going to discover. We have an automatic resistance to being told things. So if I say I'm the best at what I do, you're likely to give me some resistance. But if I say you're going to discover that I'm the best at what I do, now I've left it up to you, which I've also planted a suggestion that I'm the best. I've left it up to you to now discover for yourself, and we tend to believe things that we think we discover for ourselves over what people tell us.
Of course.
Make sense?
Yes, because we discovered it. Obviously, it's we weren't subject to someone else's opinion. We found it out on our own.
And simply a single word. All I did is change. You notice I started and I said I'm the best, and I backed up and said, as you're going to discover. Now I've told you what I am. And then, there's hundreds of phrases that I teach people, things along the lines of, I could tell you that I'm the absolute best at what there is, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you discover it for yourself. And that's another variation. What did I just tell you? I told you what I told you I wasn't going to tell you, which means I told you, but I didn't tell you. So some of this is what we call sleight of mouth. These are all very advanced language patterns that a hypnotist would use to literally fly under the conscious radar of the person listening to get to their subconscious mind to plant a suggestion. And when you've mastered the language and you know how to say things in a certain way, you can take anything that anyone says and you can spin it to a positive in your favor. So selling a business, what kind of objections would you get? What kind of things would people throw up as an objection?
Well, if someone's your price is too high or it's too risky.
Okay. When someone says your price is too high or it's too risky, this is what most people don't get. You'd mentioned the word sales trainers earlier. Most sales trainers teach. By the way, I'm saying something off the cuff here. I've done thousands of shows over the years. I was looking at my phone here. For any reason we get cut off, stay put and I'll call right back in. Never happened before, but I'm just tossing that out there. So sales trainers sales trainers teach objection response. And, they say this, you say that. What most people are never taught is that every objection, for the most part, there's only one objection that's a real objection, and that's I don't have the money. If a person really doesn't have the money, you look at their bank account and they don't have the money, that's a real objection. Every other objection, for the most part, is a smokescreen. So when someone says it costs too much or it's too much of a risk, every objection is an effect of a cause. What most people do is they answer the effect, which is the objection. What you want to discover is what the underlying belief is that causes the objection. Because when you discover the underlying belief that causes the objection and you attack that, then the objection goes away. So what most people start doing, at least in sales, is they start justifying the price, or they start justifying why it's not risky. Does that make sense so far?
Okay.
Okay. So what I would do instead is this is very simple. I would say, okay, Heath, I appreciate you saying that, but let me ask you this, Heath. What's causing you to say that? Or what's causing you to believe that? When I ask that phrase in that way, now what I'm doing is called eliciting. I'm eliciting for your belief that's driving the objection. Once I know where you got the belief, now I've got something to work with. So I'm not answering the objection anymore. I'm answering what's called the source of belief. When you eliminate the source of belief, at that point, the objection goes away because it's cause and effect. Once you get rid of the cause, the effect goes away. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Okay.
Excellent.
So let me ask you this. If a business owner becomes proficient in the techniques that you teach, how can this impact his or her bottom line? And can you give us some examples of people who have mastered this to grow their businesses as a result?
I'm making notes here of your questions. So the first question you asked is bottom line. Okay, as I said, as I went back to earlier, everything is about persuasion and influence. The world is full of mediocre marketing, if not just bad marketing. And what people want to do in their business, number one, is it all comes down to, Heath, this is could be such a long conversation. I mean, this could be a half-a-day seminar. And that people don't get, for example, in their business. All right, when people look at your website, literally, when they click on, they look at your website, 49% of people will decide to do business with you just based upon the look of your website, because your website has a feel to it. All right, and then you have to ask yourself, and then it goes even deeper than that. It goes to colors. What do colors? And this is one area of 100 points we could cover in business growth. But for example, but everyone has a website for the most part, or they should, or online presence. Let me put it that way: not a website, but online presence. But the question is, when they're on your website, how does it make them feel? Colors create emotions. My websites are medium blue with a hint of orange. Medium blue and orange together convey power and credibility. Black is the ultimate power color. If you're a real estate agent and you're a premier real estate agent, you want a black website because why? Black tie affairs. Red is not the power color. Black is. That's why Gary Keller, CEO of Keller Williams, always wears black. So then you look at that. Then you look at, I know you had Oren Claff on a while back. Oren's an old friend of mine, and he probably talked about the croc brain. Then you look at websites, and you have to look at, okay, how complex are they? One person sent me their website and said, Jim, could you critique this for me? And they had 8 different things literally on the homepage going on, everything from get this download, to sign up here, to go to this event, to watch this video, literally. I'm not kidding, 8 different things, 9, maybe 10. It was a lot. Here's the thing. When you're selling to what Oren called the croc brain, which is the primal brain, you have to make things as simple as possible. The way that I phrase it is that you have to sell to the Homer Simpson brain. So how easy and digestible is your offering? For example, Heath, are you on an Android phone or a home phone, an iPhone? What are you calling from?
Well, I'm calling from the platform right now. This is actually over the website.
Okay. Do you use an iPhone or an Android?
No.
Really? Okay.
I honestly do not use a cell phone. I will not do it.
I believe you. I was with a guy at an event last week, and he didn't have a cell phone either. He's a big marketer. So, you know that I don't know the number, but 90% of people, 95% of people have an iPhone or Android smartphone for the most part, right? And you've seen the screen before. And what do you see on an iPhone screen when you open it up? What do you see for the most part?
Well, you see the desktop. Yeah.
Yeah, the icons, right?
The desktop icons.
Now, the reason, and I did a post about this one time, and it was the biggest post I ever had in terms of response rate, and this all ties back to your question about growing business and the bottom line, is that the iPhone, you don't have to think. Literally, you look at the icons, you know what to do. There is no instruction manual. So the more that you make people think, and I do mean that in a sarcastic way, but literally, the brain doesn't like to think. The brain is designed to conserve energy. That's why, for example, that we learn habits, and habits create, because that way once you learn how to ride a bike, you don't have to go through the energy again of learning how to ride a bike again. So the brain conserves energy. The brain doesn't like to work. So if the brain has to think about your marketing or your website or any of that, then what happens is the brain automatically tunes out, glazes over, and does not do business with you. So when it comes to business, the more simple you can make your message. I mean, literally the attention span, research has been done recently, and researchers have discovered that humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish. Seriously. Goldfish, their attention span is like 9 seconds. Humans are down to 7 seconds for attention.
Jim, you've got to be kidding me.
No, I'm not. I wish I was.
Oh, boy.
If you can't capture somebody's attention just like that, I mean, boom, in a matter of 2 seconds or so on any kind of advertising or marketing you're doing. See, we live in a world of information overload, and everything I do is research-based. Many years ago, like back in the 70s, we were exposed to something like 340 commercial messages a day. This day and age, we're exposed to right at 30,000 messages a day. The brain is on complete overload. If you get on your computer, even one site you could go to has 10 banners on it. That's 10 messages in 3 seconds.
Right.
So the brain is on overload. So take this back to your question. If your business message, if your tagline, if your whole platform is not so succinct that somebody can figure it out in a matter of seconds, let me back up here again. Years ago, people used to say, on your business card, ask me about my parrot or something like that. It's some crazy stuff people used to do. But the whole point was to engage people to get them to ask questions. This day and age, if you don't grab their attention in seconds, people have no curiosity to ask questions. So what I'm telling business builders is this whole, I understand your business is about building business wealth so that when you sell the business, you have more wealth. To my knowledge, and I've been doing this 20 years, the only way you build a business is sales, marketing, and advertising, because without that, you ain't got a business. If you're not making any money, you don't have a business. And that all comes down to persuasion and influence, which has really changed the past 10 years, and people don't get it. They don't. Even big companies. One of my students was at IBM, and he's like, why doesn't IBM teach me this? Because they're not understanding that all these traditional ways of selling are dead. Color, placement, eye tracking, all this stuff some of your guests might have talked about. Where do your people look on websites? How do they decide to buy? Even colors. Amazon has it down to a science. Amazon discovered that the little kind of mustard yellow orange button that they have has the highest click-through rates. So all these things are done to influence people at an unconscious level. Dr. Gerald Zaltman at Harvard University, I'm sure you've heard of Harvard before, right? Pretty prestigious place.
Sure.
Dr. Zaltman, he's director emeritus of the business school, said that the reason that you're losing sales is because you do not know how to influence the subconscious mind of your prospect. And this is all research. I mean, this is all like world-class university research demonstrated. If you can't get into the subconscious mind of your prospect, you're losing them. Campbell's Soup, for example. You know, Campbell's Soup label, we've seen it for 100 years, right? It's an iconic label.
Mm-hmm.
They changed it a couple of years ago. The reason why is they put people into an MRI machine and they showed them images of Campbell's Soup labels. And if you notice, I think 2009 is when it was, the label changed. The reason the label changed was they realized that they had a higher buyer response rate if they changed some of the old-looking vintage frame on the label and they took the spoon out of the bowl and they put steam over the soup. They had a higher response rate than they did when they had the older label. Why? Because it subconsciously influences people. Doritos, for example. Doritos knows how many pounds of pressure it takes for you to bite down on a Dorito to feel psychological satisfaction, release endorphins in the brain. Cheetos, they put the powder on the Cheetos so you lick your fingers, which releases endorphins. If you've ever bought an Apple product, iPad actually, they put people in MRI machines and watched blood flow in the brain as they were handling iPad prototype products. And what they did is they designed products that felt so good they released endorphins in the brain. What does the brain do? The Pavlovian response. It links the pleasure to the item. Hence, that's why people love many of their products. They're designed to release endorphins in the brain to make people feel good, and they associate that good with the product. Crazy, isn't it?
It is. It just goes to show you that it's not really so much about the quality of the product as some of the ancillary things around the product. You know, what it makes you feel, or how it makes you feel, and what it makes you do, and so forth.
No one
so
thinks.
This is deep. Yeah.
Let me add something here. No one thinks. When we buy things, for example, if I were to walk into a store, Kroger, or I shop at Whole Foods, but if I were to walk in and I saw soup, I wouldn't think in that moment, do I like soup, do I not like soup? If I do like soup, what kind of soup do I like? And if I do like soup and I would eat soup, which brand of soup would I eat? All those decisions have already been made for me at some point in the past, out of my past experiences and past history. So we operate all day long on autopilot. And what business owners have to do, and of course most of us don't have the resources to do, fMRI research, all that kind of stuff. But as business owners, we have to ask ourselves, what can I do to embed myself in the subconscious mind of my prospect? What's going to make them feel good? Because even when we go to a website, before we ever read text, the unconscious mind is already seeing how it feels about the feel of the website, because the website gives them a feel of power or weakness or status or whatever. We're already feeling and making decisions even while we think that we're analytically thinking through it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. So let me ask you this then. What are the biggest mistakes that you find people are making when they try to incorporate persuasion and influence into their business? Say, for example, if they're doing a sales presentation or they're doing marketing, what is the biggest mistake that they make?
Let me give you two examples here. One is I don't attend people's webinars anymore. I saw this guy who also says he teaches neuroscience and selling and all this kind of stuff. And I hopped on his webinar, and and he said, I'm a sales guru and all this kind of stuff. And he talked all this big, peptides and all this kind of big, I don't even use them anymore, because the more big words you use, the more people you lose. Like
right.
Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time. He goes, I don't put any math equations in my book because I half my readers by every math equation. But this guy touts himself as, that's crazy. This guy touts himself as some big neuroscience persuasion sales guru guy, yet he didn't demonstrate a single thing that he talked about. So basically he could talk about persuasion and influence, but me being a persuasion and influence expert watching his webinar, it was 0% persuasive and influence. He went about it the wrong way. So the way that we implement these in business, the first thing you have to do in any sales presentation, I'm going to actually put this back on you. What do you think the first thing that you have to do in a presentation is?
this is what I think that. Did you say that? What do I think the most common mistake is?
First thing. Well, let's go back. The first thing. What's the first thing you have to do? Because you mentioned presentations. That's probably what people want to know about. What do you think? What's the first thing you have to do in a sales presentation of any kind?
You have to introduce yourself.
Okay. The first thing you have to do. Are you ready? I'm going to do this in a different way, but get their attention.
Get their attention. Okay.
I yelled at you, but you go back to Billy Mays, right? Remember Billy Mays in the infomercials that scream at people?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Billy Mays.
Oh, my goodness. You're taking me way back, buddy.
That's calculated. That's calculated because we go through our lives literally in light hypnosis, and what he did, that's called a pattern interrupt. He would get their attention. This day and age, our attention span is so small that if you can't take out a 2x4 and whack me right between the eyes, I mean, boom, right at the beginning, you've already lost me. So the first thing you have to do.
You're right about that. You have to knock them over the head and say, "Hey, what's up? Pay attention. Open your eyes." Yes.
You have to break them out of. You have to break them out of. Literally, we are in light hypnosis all day long. We're on autopilot. You have to break them out of that through the pattern interrupt. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I watch Shark Tank because it gives me a lot of great examples that I can use. I can shoot videos on. And there was an episode where they were just talking to the sharks about tell us your most interesting moments as a shark and, what do you think makes a great pitch and all this. And Robert Herjavec, or whatever his name, he nailed it. Mm-hmm. He said the most powerful pitches are the ones who get our attention right away. So you have to get people's attention. And what most people do is they go right into the solution. You don't go right into the solution first. You get their attention first, then you go in the problem. If you watch Billy Mays, and these infomercials sell billions of dollars a year. Billy Mays actually gets your attention by screaming at you. Then he goes in, are you tired of back-breaking work? Are you tired of scrubbing on your hands and knees? So what he's doing is he's going into the problem, getting you to say yes. That's the second part of your presentation. The third part of your presentation is now demonstration and solution. Most people start at solution. No, that's not the first place. That's step number 3. It's demonstration, solution, and credibility. Then you go into the close. Whereas most people start with, oh, this is what we can do for you, and here's what we are, and blah, 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 blah. They're starting at the wrong end. So you would ask, okay, so the biggest mistake is that they don't think about this stuff because they don't know about this stuff. So
there you go.
Yeah, and rarely do people ever say, let me think about how persuasive and influential my marketing can be. Rarely do people say, in sales, am I being as influential at an unconscious and very deep level as I can be, like Campbell's Soup or Google or Doritos? Am I being as persuasive and influential as I can at a very deep level in my presentation to maximize every exposure that I have with a client? And people never ask themselves that because they're operating on 1950s outdated selling technology and technology knowledge.
Okay.
So that's the biggest mistake is that they're not even thinking, how do I get, like Dr. Zaltman at Harvard said, they never think about how can I get into the mind of my prospect. That's their biggest mistake.
All right. So once you've studied influence and persuasion, how can a person encode that into their DNA? I mean, really get it in their blood so that they do that as second nature. So they do it without even having to think about it. For example, building it as a habit. So let's say you're in the middle of a big deal. It's the way of the sword when you're in the middle of a big deal, right? Lots of emotions going on. And that's no place to have to stop and think about persuasion language in your presentation. How do you get it to where it's natural?
It goes back to partly my buddy Orrin, and these are things he and I do the same thing but different things. We teach 2 different styles. Orrin obviously taught pitching for years. I teach in the trenches, salespeople and marketing people. So let's go back. There's even a bigger question that wasn't just asked is, do you have frame control in that presentation? Are you controlling them or are they controlling you unconsciously? So if you're controlling them, what we do is I love dogs. I'm a dog lover. Do you have any dogs, Heath?
I have a neighbor's dog that comes over all the time. Does that count?
Okay, so close, but the thing is this, when you go to a dog park and you notice the first thing dogs do is they start smelling each other, what they're doing is they're vying for pack order. We as humans also vie for pack order, not even recognizing that we do it. You walk into a boardroom, what's the first thing you start doing? If you don't know anyone, you start looking for who's in charge. Then you start sizing everyone up, not even realizing you're doing it by, he's wearing a presidential Rolex, a $20,000 watch. Or I saw him get out of a $100,000 car walking in here. Or really, this person is dressed kind of shabbily or whatever. So we don't even know we consciously do that, but we're doing it. So what we're doing is we're establishing pack order. So your question, we're not even there yet. The first question is, if you're doing a presentation, have you established frame control? Because you haven't established frame control, now they're following you instead of you following them. Any and every pitch, you should have frame control. And if you don't, then you're following them, which means they're directing your behavior. What you've done is you put yourself in a subservient position when they have frame control. Now, what frame control means is this. A video that I have on my website is a movie, The King's Speech. Did you ever see the movie The King's Speech back in 2011 or so? Okay.
Sure.
Very early in the movie, for those who haven't seen it, let me give you a quick example. It's about a prince who's the son of the King of England who goes to a speech therapist. Now, the therapist is a nobody. He's broke. He has no social status, but yet he's interacting with the son of the king, who would be future King of England. So what happens is the prince comes into the office, you may remember Heath, and he's all like, call me your Royal Highness, call me your, all this kind of stuff. And the speech therapist says, how about we call you Bertie, which is his nickname for his family. And he says, absolutely not. He goes, only my family calls me that. And he's like, great, that's what we're going to call you. So what he didn't do is what most people do, is they become subservient to the higher authority. Whereas in the movie, he actually took the authority away, and then he became the authority. And then very quickly the prince started following him because he had frame control. So in your presentation, if you give people frame control, which is social authority over you, they will control you. That's number one. That's the number one most important thing. So next, when it comes to languaging, how do you make it natural? Well, part of it's psychological. Who controls who? What are the dynamics in the room? How are things playing out in the room? Next, then it comes to language. Now, I've been teaching language for a lot of years. So when it comes to language, I teach my students, like when they go to my website and they start learning it, just take one language pattern and just start working with it. And then once you learn that pattern, I learned this many years ago, back in the early 90s, when I was studying to be a hypnotist and I was in training. We didn't have computers back then. I didn't. And so I would write a language pattern like the fact that blank means blank, or the more you think about it, the more you're going to realize, or I could tell you blank, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you discover it for yourself, and on and on. I would write these on a 3x5 card, carry them in my pocket, and then I would see how many times I could use them throughout the day. So basically I immersed myself in the language where today I'm unconsciously competent. And I have to be because I teach it. And if I teach it, I have to demonstrate it. So the long answer is that you start learning, unlike anything, you just learn bit by bit by bit and piece it together over time.
All right, fair enough. So let me ask you this. Let's say we have a business owner who now understands neuropersuasion. How do they use neuropersuasion to impact the culture of their company? For example, their company is underperforming and they really need to get people motivated and charged up because sales are slumping, profits are slumping, they're getting to a point where they're just breaking even and so forth. How do you teach this to your employees? How do you implant your mind, the psychological frame onto the mindset of your employees?
Okay. Well, number one is you don't ever use the word neuropersuasion because most people are workers in the world, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I really don't. But it's your job to lead. So we look at things here. Let me ask you this, Heath. What do you think the number one thing that, and this has all been, neuro-tested and everything, what do you think the number one thing that humans want is psychologically? Number one thing we want in the workplace, in life, in social situations. Let me rephrase. In any kind of social interaction, whether it be friends, family, church, work, Boy Scouts, whatever, what do you think the number one thing we want is?
I would say satisfaction and, another word for that would be acknowledgement, to be acknowledged. I'm probably wrong. I don't know.
Okay, so why do you think then, let me reframe this and ask it in a more metaphorical way. Why do you think that you might drive by a trailer park in a low-income area, but you see Cadillacs out in front of the trailers? What do you
A lot of
think
different
causes
things come to mind. Status. Okay, so status.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. That's the number one thing that people want is status. People spend their entire lives either wanting to look good or preventing looking bad. We want status. And you look at it in nature. You look at the male peacock. He is the male peacock with the best feathers is the one who gets the female. You look at it in all kinds of nature. You know, the ram with the biggest horns and the nicest coat and the tallest and all this. We want status. That's what we clamor for. No one wants the $1 million mortgage. What they want is they want the status of being able to have a $1 million mortgage. Okay? So what I would look at in my business is how can I give my people status? There's a multi-level marketing company called Visalis. And what they do, and there's you know, it depends on how you want to run your business. There's some positives and negatives about it. But at Visalis, once you hit a certain level of production, then you get a car allowance every month. And what's required, you can only buy one kind of car. You can only buy a BMW, and you can only buy it in like black and gray. And what they're doing is people are actually working towards status. And all the motivation in that whole company revolves around getting the BMW. What is that? It's nothing more than carrot and stick, but it's status for people. So this company drives their drivers with status. So the number one thing that I would look at is how can I help my people have status, because that makes people feel good and it makes them feel important and powerful. The next is how can I make people feel part of an organization. People actually don't, and this is all research demonstrated, MIT did some research on this, paying people more money for the most part doesn't get any more productivity out of them. What does is do they feel like they're a part of something? People want to be part because we're social creatures. And this is tons of research has been done. Well, we'll pay these people a lot more. If we pay them a lot more, they'll do a lot more, and they'll get more creative, and they'll come to work earlier. Nope, it doesn't happen. So status, feeling a part of something, and then empowering people. If you look at Apple has mastered a lot of this, everything from the marketing to the culture to everything. And you look at Apple, they empower their kids to make decisions. So, you know, how do you empower your people is what I would ask. 20 years ago out of college, I worked at the Ritz-Carlton waiting tables out of college. And at that point, I was like, what am I doing here? I went to a private school. I'm a smart guy. What did I do wrong? You know, blah, blah, all these things in my head, like I shouldn't be waiting tables. I'm too smart for this. Best experience I ever had. The Ritz-Carlton, the hospitality industry has a 70% turnover yearly. The Ritz-Carlton has a 1.9% turnover yearly. They set the world standard for excellence in the hospitality industry, and pretty much any industry. I mean, those guys are amazing. But they empower their people. Every employee there has an open checkbook, literally, not figuratively. Well, I don't mean a physical one, but a mental one. Any employee there, from the dishwasher to the bellboy, has an allowance of $600 per day per guest. If I'm waiting on you or something happens and you need something, I have the authority without asking anyone. I can spend $600 on you if I wanted to keep you happy. And I can do that for every guest every single day. So to extremely empower your people, which the Ritz does and Apple does, and give them status, make them feel a part of something, that's when you get production and that's when you get happy cultures.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
That's why I get paid.
They don't.
I was kidding. That's why I get paid the big bucks. No, please go ahead.
So the employee is empowered, and now you have your decision maker right there on the front line with the point of contact being straight on with the customer, and they get to make the decision right then and there. They don't have to get a mother may I. They don't have to fill out a memo and send it up the chain and get an approval from this vice president, the other vice president, and then the president of this, and then have it come back down through the manager. And they don't have to. They can make it right there.
I have a $2,500. Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I want to add, because I have a $2,500 MacBook Pro, and the first week it broke, and it had a battery problem. There was this probably 20-year-old kid there, and the kid's like, no problem, I'll just replace it. Really? $2,500? And this kid's 20 years old, and he's making decisions like this. And now Apple is the number one valued company in the world. Aren't they worth like $347 billion or something?
Depending on which stock price you use, yes.
but it's culture. It's culture, and it's the product. And Apple you talk about how businesses use it. Apple designs their products for two things. They design their products to look good and to be simple, and they design for elegance and status. If you look at the phone, for an iPhone, the box, it is a nice box. The box even feels good, okay? So they are subconsciously influencing people simply by their packaging or the way that they treat people, or even their commercials, their entire marketing message. For example, you know that Coca-Cola has no value whatsoever. It's bad for you. I'm guessing you know that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
How often do you see a Coca-Cola commercial that says, "Hey, drink Coke because it's good for you," or "This is what's in Coke"? Have you ever seen that before?
No.
Okay. One of the most famous commercials, if not one of the top 3 commercials of all time, is 1969, "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing," Coca-Cola commercial. Coke ties all of their products, neural associates all their products to feeling good.
Yes.
That's their whole marketing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at Apple iPad. Apple, the best commercial I've ever seen out of those guys. I was watching the Patriots Bronco game last year, and the best commercial that I've ever seen was the iPad Air commercial, where it was Robin Williams from Dead Poets Society, and he's talking about write your verse, write your poem in life. And they have all these scenes of people using the iPad, and Robin Williams is narrating, write your verse, write your story, basically. So what they're associating is use the iPad to write your verse and write your story. Never one time in that entire commercial did they ever even utter or mention or narrate the words Apple or iPad. They completely, it's called associated, they completely associated that iPad to me. So the question is what can you associate to your customers? So that was a roundabout answer there, but that's one of the ways, again, you use it. And there's so many ways, and it depends on the business and what kind of business you're in. But every business can do it. It's just a matter of what the industry is and how you do it.
Okay, so let me ask you this now. Some people might say, wait a minute, stop the presses. This sounds manipulative. How do you respond to that? This
is the way that I look at that. When we use language patterns, for example, I tell people, let's take this in 2 parts. Let's use language patterns, okay? When people have said, Jim, aren't you being unethical, subconsciously influencing people and with language? And this is what I tell people. There is no such thing as an unethical pattern or technique or strategy, simply unethical users. There's a guy that I know in the industry who teaches something similar. There's not many of us, but there's one guy, and he uses it, and I watch him to snake oil sell people to get money out of their pocket. That is unethical. That is manipulative. Now, let me back up here. Everything is about persuasion and influence. There's nothing in your life that you haven't persuaded or influenced somebody to give you. For example, this call-in service, I assume you're paying for it, correct? I'm guessing?
Yes.
You had to get the money for that somewhere, right? Meaning you worked for it, or you sold something, or right? You got something somewhere. So if I daisy-chain that and looked at everything, I assume, and I'm joking here, but I'm assuming you got clothes on right now, right?
Yes.
I hope maybe you're a nudist, maybe you're home naked. I don't know. But
if I were, then this show would be real interesting.
I don't know where you are, but I'm assuming you're sitting in a chair, you're in a house, somebody built that house or office or whatever, and all that glass and fabrication and chairs and leather you're sitting on, everything is bought and sold. Everything in the world, everything if you're married, you had to persuade your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or whoever, you had to persuade them to go on the very first date with you. So let's start there. So how old are you, Heath? How old are you now?
I'm 43.
Okay. Ever have a first date?
Yes.
Back when you were 17, 16, 18, whatever it was? Now, what's the first thing that women do when they really like a guy and they want to go on a date? What do most young women do before the date?
Well, they get ready.
Exactly. And what do they do when they all they'll get their nails done, right? And they'll buy a new blouse and stuff like that. And the guy might clean his car, right? And wash his car and maybe get a new shirt or something. Now, why do they do this? This will answer your question, as fundamental as it is. Why do they do this?
To feel good about themselves on that date. No?
Persuade and influence the other person to like them.
Oh, okay.
Think about that for a second. Okay. A girl wants the guy to like her, so she's going to present herself in the best possible way. right? Even though she might, as an after effect, feel good about herself, she's doing it to persuade or influence, right?
Fair enough. Okay.
He's doing the same. Now, does she hop in the car and say, by the way, I got my nails done today, and I bought a new blouse, and I got my hair done, and the reason that I did that is because I wanted to persuade and influence you to like me.
No.
I wanted to create a favorable outcome here. No, not at all.
Only if it were that simple, okay?
Exactly. So what happened is she's persuading and influencing, not even knowing she's persuading and influencing. So to your question, we are always persuading and influencing, but the question is, how good do you want to be at it? Do you want to be not good or average? Then do what you're doing. If you want to be great at it, which I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't, not being great at persuasion and influence is having a business. It's the same thing as having a business and saying, customer service, we know it's important, but we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to be great at it. It's the same thing. It's fundamental to a business. So it's not about manipulation. It's about how tight, how good, how sharp can we make our sales, marketing, and advertising? Because the sharper and more persuasive and influential our sales, marketing, and advertising, the higher our sales. The higher our sales, the healthier our company is. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So there's nothing, when you look at it, what's unethical about getting people to buy products that they want anyway? They're going to get somewhere. They want to buy somewhere else. They will use somewhere else. There's nothing unethical about that. And one of my biggest things is ethics. These are my words, my phrase. I believe in karma. You take money out of somebody's pocket unethically, somebody else is going to take that money right back out of your pocket. So the way that I look at it is I always walk the ethical line, but I'm always looking at how can I be as precise and razor sharp in my sales, marketing, and advertising as I can be. And it happens all day long also, even with sacred geometry. You look at the Texaco emblem. It's the pentagram. You look at the Mercedes-Benz emblem. You look at different symbology and emblems. These things all affect us in some way unconsciously. So I have no problems, none whatsoever, helping companies. I'm going to be honest here. If anybody listening, I hope not to offend anyone. There is one industry that I will not work in, and that is the mainstream pharmaceutical industry. If they hired me as a client, I wouldn't take the job. And that's my own personal belief system, and it's even been research demonstrated that there is no safe drug. If you watch every drug commercial, what do they say at the end? If you suffer a stroke or heart attack, or this could cause blood clots or immediate death, and you look at every commercial that has that, there is no safe drug. That's one industry I don't work with. Other than that, I would help any other industry pretty much.
Well, for our listeners, just in case they do want to work with you, how can they get a hold of you? What's your contact information, your website, and so forth?
Couple of ways. One is my website is actually Tammy DeLue, who introduced us, created a link last night. It's tiny, T-I-N-Y, URL, tinyurl.com/sales training now. tinyurl.com/sales training now. And then if they'd like to get a hold of me personally, it's Jim at Mind Authority, one word, Jim at mindauthority.com.
All right. And on a personal note, let me say this, Jim.
Sure.
We have been using your stuff at Delta Business Services for over a year. We've been putting it into our webinars. We've been putting it into our marketing materials, putting it in our website, and so forth. And that's one of the main things that differentiates us from the rest of the pack. We're not a Me Too by any stretch. Our webinars have a consistently high retention rate. In fact, I think the very first webinar I ever did, Jim, we kept 100% of the listeners on the webinar all the way to the end.
That's amazing.
That was not an accident. No. It's because we used your stuff. Tammy and I worked very hard on getting that webinar and putting the right language to frame the webinar in such a way where people could follow the webinar and stay interested in the subject matter all the way through to the end. It's been invaluable. And so for our listeners who are interested in making a difference in their own businesses and, quite frankly, in their own lives, because this stuff is applicable to other areas of your life, too.
Yes. If you got kids, you want to know this stuff.
Exactly.
If you got kids, you want to know.
Yes, indeed. Give Jim Fortin a call. Go to the tinyurl.com/sales training. That's the address, right? tinyurl.com.
Sales training now. Sales training now.
And get the materials. Hop online, get the materials. Learn about Jim. Learn about frame control. Learn about influence and persuasion. It's going to make the difference in your business. And Jim, thank you so much for being on the Business Exit Roundtable. We really appreciate your time. It has been absolutely amazing, my friend. Thank you so much. And we're going to have you back. You're too good to let go, so we're going to have you back here soon and talk more about this.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Heath. I appreciate it, and let me know what I can do to be of service.
All right. Is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
No, I'm good. Actually, I was going to have a little fun here. What we could have done differently in the close is we could have said things like, you know what, as you're going to discover when you use his material, if your sales are going to grow right in front of your eyes or something. Let's plant a suggestion for them. Let's get them excited and engage the imagination. Or we can do a before and after. You could do something like a before and after when you close. Before you use Jim's material, you might have been struggling, and then you apply it all, and then after that, what happens is your sales take off. Or you talked about contrast. You said we're different because we started implementing Jim's material. The number one thing the brain looks for when it's comparing A to B is contrast. And if you don't have obvious contrast in your business, and you can have it by using my material, if you don't have obvious contrast, you're going to lose your prospect to your competition. So that being said, they've got my contact information, and I'm here to help anybody that I can help. And everything, I've got hundreds of videos over on my website, tinyurl.com/sales training now. I've got about 300 videos over there. 150 are persuasion and influence, and about 150 are peak performance. How to manage your mind using the same kind of approach and same kind of material. It's all very easy to use, and it's so inexpensive. It's a no-brainer for anybody that's serious about growing their sales. So this is what we want to tell them. Once they get off the call, go to the domain name, get registered on my site, and start watching videos and applying and growing their business. Okay, I'm done.
Wonderful, Jim. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate you. God bless you. And thank you again for being on the Business Exit Roundtable.
Take care, my friend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. You got it. Yep. And that's going to do it for our show today. We want to thank all of our listeners, and we want to thank our guest, Jim Fortin. I want to thank my entire team at Delta Business Services and at the Business Exit Roundtable. I want to thank Tammy DeLue, who's absolutely fantastic. She's the media coordinator for me. And if you are a business owner and you're looking to exit your business, give us a call. You may have been struggling before, but people who have called us have found out that there is hope on the other side and a successful outcome is obtainable. Call us at 210-369-4161 or go to deltabusinessservices.com. We're the only source for the guaranteed solution where you have a 100% success rate in exiting your businesses. All right. Thank you again. God bless you, everybody, and we'll see you on the next edition of the Business Exit Roundtable, and cheers to your exit success.
Thanks for listening to the Business Exit Roundtable with Heath Frantzen, featuring real experts with real ideas about planning for a spectacular life that's more exciting and prosperous. Set your calendar and make the appointment to join us again next week when we'll solve more common problems faced by business owners who want to exit on the Business Exit Roundtable.
Hey everyone, it's Bill Black, the Exit Coach, and let's face it, handing over the reins of a business that you've been running for years is an emotional thing for sellers, and you want to know that your baby is in good hands. There's a company out there called Delta Business Services that's created a process to create certainty for a successful business exit, and you ought to know about it. Heath Frantzen at Delta Business Services is someone that you ought to talk to. They've created a strategy that will take the uncertainty and the worry out of your business exit, because they will buy your business and help with the transition and the transfer of the business. That's right, at Delta Business Services, they'll make sure that your exit strategy is pain and worry-free with their common-sense personal approach. To find out more information, you just got to go to their website and check it out. It's at deltabusinessservices.com. That's deltabusinessservices.com, or contact Heath Frantzen at 210-369-4161. That's 210-369-4161.
If you're a business owner who wants to sell your successful company, then you need to pay careful attention to what I'm about to tell you. Selling a business in today's crazy-making economy is not for the faint of heart. A successful sale requires courage, resolve, and a big pair of free selling tools. Get your free risk analysis tool and special report today from the only company that can help you sell your business in 49 days or less and pay zero taxes. Go to www.deltabusinessservices.com/exit coach to download